we will now move on to the regular agenda. Our first item of business is proposed donation of West Fargo Historical Center materials to NDSU archives. Carissa?
Thanks, Alana. Over the last 6 or so months, myself and the library service managers have had time to review the library's capacity to continue to acquire and care for and provide public access to materials in the West Fargo Historical Center. And so tonight I'm proposing the donation of the materials comprising the West Fargo Historical Center to the North Dakota State University Archives by December 31st, 2020. This is a non-circulating collection of materials that includes about 265 cubic feet of material as well as some electronic material. And it includes things like city commission minutes, West Fargo Pioneer in print and microfilm, Fargo Moorhead city directories, West Fargo school yearbooks, family histories, obituaries, photographs, documents, oral histories, and things like that, documenting the city and its history and its growth. So I reached out to NDSU archives to inquire about their facility and their operation and their capacity to acquire the materials. And I also did have discussions as well to ask them the same types of things to the North Dakota State Historical Society as well. And I highlighted several reasons for this proposal coming forward in the memo that was included in your packet, which is also publicly available. But I'll summarize kind of the key points tonight too. So preserving and providing public access to non-circulating archives and government records really does take a specific infrastructure, and such as facilities meant to house and provide controlled public access to the materials, as well as specific professional expertise. Being a public library, we don't have this infrastructure to manage the materials. Before I worked at WFPL, I worked in archives and special collections departments in both public and academic libraries, so I can speak with authority on this and what it takes to manage those types of collections. So as we look forward, we know that our established growth areas for the WFPL are in programming and outreach, and the data and the clear need for those services are there. And so I've talked about that, with you guys over the last 6 months, alongside some of our budget discussions and things like our 10-year staffing plan. And as with any organization, we need to prioritize, and we need to lean into those growth areas, and additionally not spread our staff so thin to the point where we're going in too many different directions to really manage. So I think it's also pertinent that I point out a couple of things that this proposal is not doing. So the proposal is not saying that West Fargo historical materials aren't valuable. In fact, it's exactly the opposite of that. I think what I'm saying is that myself and the managers who have been thinking about this believe that the materials are important, that residents should have consistent access to them locally, and we believe that the documentation should continue to grow, but us filling that role is not a feasible one or one of our primary functions. Another thing to note is that we're not saying that we don't do local history programming. Most of what we've done in that vein, we have done and can continue to do without the materials. The sort of programming, it doesn't require that we specifically are the ones to do things like catalog and house and preserve and provide the direct public access to the materials themselves. So I outlined a proposed course of action in the memo that was in your packets. So what I'm asking for tonight is for approval for myself to initiate and complete a donation of approximately 265 cubic feet of material comprising the West Fargo Historical Center at the West Fargo Public Library to NDSU archives as outlined in the memo. So with that, I am willing to take any of your questions.
Carissa, you said you met with NDSU and the North Dakota Historical Society. Can you tell us a little bit more about your meetings with them?
Sure, yeah. So in the meetings, I knew about them and kind of what their operation, their facilities, but I just kind of wanted to confirm some of what I already knew a bit, about their facility and how they provide public access to materials and stuff like that. So they both definitely have the capacity to do those things. That is primarily what they do for the public and obviously the students in NDSU's case as well. What the distinguishing factor, and the archivist that I talked to at the State Historical Society, they were in agreement with this, that it makes more sense for the materials to be more locally accessible at NDSU as opposed to having the State Historical Society be their home. And there are like materials at NDSU already similar to the region. They collect for the eastern region of the state, so it makes sense for NDSU to be the home. And they also have city of Fargo materials as well. So both of the organizations, NDSU and the State Historical Society, when I talked to them, NDSU obviously, but even the State Historical Society was in agreement that the best place for them is NDSU.
Carissa, you may have answered this, but there was a slight distraction in my house. Does NDSU have the capacity currently to take it on?
Yes, they do. And they recently expanded their storage capacity as well. So they assured me that they were confident that they had the space and also, yes, like the staffing capacity to take it on too. Yep. Yeah.
So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Carissa, go on.
Oh, no, I just saw that Larry, I think, wants to say something because he raised his hand.
Sure, go ahead, Larry.
Oh, no, please, after you, Jody.
When I saw this proposal and the donation to NDSU, I think one of my questions was, what is their capacity to commit to maintaining this long term, given that they are susceptible to some major budget cuts? And I'm glad that you have some firsthand knowledge of what would be the costs to maintaining a collection like this for the long term, because our hope is that, we would donate this to a place where it would not only be maintained, but be accessible and even grow over time. And so one of my concerns is that the library, like everywhere on campus, but the library especially, has been really harmed by budget cuts on campus. And so what is their capacity to assure you and us that this collection would be maintained over time?
I mean, I can't speak to sort of what the future could hold with their budget cuts and stuff like that, but I guess what I would say is that archives and special collections, whether it's at a historical society or a university, when they acquire something, it's a commitment on their end to take it into perpetuity. And they typically have a set collecting mission and collecting area that they're committed to. So there's not a real risk of like turnover, if you will, or them no longer retaining it. Yeah, does that help answer at least part of what I think you're asking?
A little bit. I think in some sort of in an agreement that we could put forth with the university, maybe we could address that if there ever became a time where it might be, if they would be unable to maintain this, that maybe we could take it back. I don't know. I think we should think about that, what we might do if that ever became a possibility.
if I had to throw out a guess, if there was ever a worst case scenario where let's just say they literally were not going to have the NDSU archives anymore, my guess is that another archival institution in the state would take ownership of, do you know what I mean? Like
Sure.
materials as it made sense locally.
Sure. But maybe we want to say that we want to say in that,
Yeah.
you know, we want to be consulted in what happens with that, or the library wants to be consulted in what happens to it. Whatever makes sense. I don't know. It was just a thought of mine about the longevity of it.
Right. Yep. Yeah, Larry?
I second Jody's concerns and would urge you in your talks with the North Dakota Institute for Regional Studies to insert into any agreement the provision that should things go south, that the material that we donated to them be returned to us. I have a feeling that what would happen is that material would go to the North Dakota Historical Society in Bismarck.
Yep.
But one of the provosts, Craig Schnell at NDSU some time ago, tried to kill the NDSU archives or the Institute for Regional Studies and ship that all off to Bismarck anyway. He's no longer there. They still remain. So
honestly, I think that does make sense. And like, that's even something that we ourselves, if this course of action that I proposed, if I move forward with this, that's even something that I will need to do with the donor agreements that we do have, is exactly what you're saying, Larry, which is look back at them and if there are any conditions in them about us no longer retaining the materials, if any of them wanted the option and had outlined that in the agreement, then it's exactly as you're proposing, Larry. It's the same sort of idea. Yeah. Yep. So I think yes, I think that makes sense, and I can make sure that gets in there.
Could you just refresh my memory on the number of uses that the public has for this? Maybe it was in that packet and I'm just not recalling it. Do we track the usage by the public of this currently in the West Fargo Library?
Not really. We don't have a lot of hours really per week that it is available to people to come in and use, because we just don't have the staff dedicated to provide that kind of controlled access, because it's not the same as collections that are in the library that circulate where people can browse really independently. Typically with stuff like this, it involves a fair amount of staff mediation in terms of pulling materials and helping people use it. It's not quite as straightforward as our circulating materials, and then also making sure that to a certain extent they don't go out the door, if you will. So there haven't been consistent tracking of usage. I don't think it's significant based on the fact that we haven't had the capacity to provide that kind of access to it.
I had a similar question to Steve's actually, because I also couldn't find like a metric or a data point in the director's reports about number of usages. This is just an idea or a suggestion. Would it be worthwhile before we made this decision to solicit input from patrons about what their thoughts are on losing these resources in the library? How many people or community members this may impact?
My thought on that is that I do want to reiterate that people aren't losing access to the materials. We're not getting rid of them. We're increasing the hours actually that they would be able to actually go use them. So in my mind, the way that I've been thinking about this, and because I get where you're coming from, I have thought similarly about that too, Jody, but I still feel like at the end of the day, they're still going to exist. and we can still direct people to them and, you know, use the knowledge that we have of them. But now people will be able to actually access them, you know, 40 hours a week in an environment that is set up for that kind of access. So that's my feeling on it. Yeah.
I have a question based on what you said. The items aren't available unless that specific employee is there? Is that
so? Yes and no, and part of that is because we don't have the storage facility for any of the materials. So technically, the materials are not well supervised, and most of them are in a hallway sort of by our staircase. So that's another major issue. So technically, no, but in order to like use it and really know what you're looking at, you kind of do need that archivist or like a staff person there to sort of walk you through some of that. So that's what I mean when I say yes and no. It's not a good controlled access environment at all. And the hours available that we have staffing for, yeah, are few.
So I think it's an interesting idea, but as I'm just reviewing the bullet points, the final 5 bullet points that are listed above the actionable item that you sent out, and I think it's worth pursuing, but I'm hesitant personally to commit to fully donating without seeing what's going to be donated and what the agreement is. It looks like the agreement, although we'll have a chance to review it, it's drafted by the NDSU archives, and I'm not sure if there's a lot of stuff happening here, and we don't have a lot of information, and I'm hesitant that we're putting the cart before the horse a little bit, but that's just my personal thought. I don't know if any of the other board members want to share their thoughts.
The timeline, is it anything to do with the current situation that we're doing this now?
Yeah, partially, yes. My thinking is just that we have a lot of other things going on, and I just want, and also NDSU needs to come and survey the collection and things like that. So partially my thought with just the 6 months is that is ideally the goal for when I would want this to be completed. I wouldn't think that it would take that long, but I just wanted to set a realistic parameter, so to speak. With the agreement, I put drafted by NDSU archives because typically the agreement does come from the organization that you're donating something to. But Alana, I think we can work with them in outlining the specific, components so that the board knows what is being donated, you know what I mean, really clearly. I think that they will work with us in drafting something that has parameters in there that we would agree to. Yeah.
And I agree and trust that process. I just don't want to make a motion without seeing the agreement personally.
Oh, yeah.
That's
okay.
what I'm saying. The motion is to initiate and complete a donation of approximately, and then it goes on into the details. And I'm fully comfortable with making a motion to initiate it. And if the board votes, of course, we can take it as is, but it's to initiate and complete a donation specifically in what you have proposed as a motion, and that there is no motion on the table right now. But that's where my train of thought is coming from. So maybe we should get a motion on the table to see how to proceed. Does anybody have any motions they would like to make?
I like your train of thought, Alana. I think I'm on the same page as you. How about a motion to initiate the process to generate a detailed inventory, and also to have the NDSU archivist come over and do the survey that Carissa described, so that they are on the same page as us as well. That, I think, to me, that sounds like a good start. Would anybody like to add anything to that?
No, that's something I could support with a second, kind of a
So
first step.
can I read what I'm going to do is read what Carissa proposed as the actionable item. It was if you have the piece of paper, it's just way down here. And I'm going to read it without the word complete. So to make sure we have the right motion on the table. So the motion is approval for the library director to initiate a donation of approximately 265 cubic feet of material plus electronic material, comprising the West Fargo Historical Center at the West Fargo Public Library to the NDSU archives as outlined above. Jody, is that your motion?
I was reading all the bullet points quickly again.
Okay, take your time.
Okay. So one of the bullet points is that the NDSU Archives Library Director, you, Alana, and the City Attorney review and sign the donation agreement drafted by the NDSU Archives. So we would probably, that's not part of the initiation, that would be part of the completion.
Yep.
And then the actual moving of the items. So maybe just the first 3 bullet points of those 5 bullet points. So the initiation components of that.
Yep, makes sense.
That's good? Yep. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I would second that part then.
And Joy, do you you understand what you have the minutes correct? Okay, thumbs up. Should I repeat it again, or is everybody okay? I'll repeat it one more time. So we have a motion and a second to approve for the library director to initiate a donation of approximately 265 cubic feet of material plus electronic material, comprising the West Fargo Historical Center at the West Fargo Public Library to the NDSU archives as outlined above in the first 3 bullet points. Is there any discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion approved. Okay, we will move on to the next item, which is the director's report.
So I'm gonna try to get through several bullet points that I have quickly so we can get on to Sarah and Lauren, who are gonna talk about our curbside service that we started this week, and then Lauren's gonna talk about the summer reading program. So I'll talk a little bit first about the status of our phased reopening plans. So as you know, some staff are back working in the library this week, and some will continue to return next week. Again, I think just through this whole thing, everybody has differing levels, different needs, different comfort levels with, you know, their feelings about reopening in general, just what's going on in our city and our state. And I feel that we have taken the necessary precautions, at least to get us to the point that we are now. And so I'll touch on a few different things that we have implemented to get staff back in the building. So right now, all visitors and unscheduled staff are being approved by me ahead of time. So nobody's coming into the building that's not a scheduled staff person, essentially without prior approval by me. Everybody is doing a temp check and answering a questionnaire when they enter the building. And we have sanitization stations set up throughout the library. Masks are being required for staff to wear when it's reasonable that they'll come within 6 feet of somebody. We have a cleaning schedule for high-touch surfaces that staff are doing on a regular basis, sending out a lot of reminders about washing your hands, sanitizing, distancing. We did open one of our book drops this week, the one that's at the physical library location, and we're quarantining our items for 3 days based on the preliminary studies that were done and that had circulated in the library community about how long the virus can live on different surfaces. So the studies that were done initially showed that it could live for up to about 3 days on a plastic surface, which is the criteria that we're using, because most of our items are, even though there might be a paper book, for example, they're covered in a plastic material to make them circulate longer. So yeah, and so we've been sending out a ton of reminders to staff about, frequent hand washing. If anybody feels sick, to not come to work or to leave immediately, and if they have a sick family member, to notify HR. And so we've got a lot of different policies in place all at the same time. Things seem to be going pretty well. At this point, for us I outlined in the plan several pieces of criteria or conditions that it would take for us to move from one phase to the next. So for us to get to the point of opening the doors, there are a few things that would need to happen. One is, and I think we need more time to see what the conditions are going to be over time, especially now that things are opened up more than they were, even over the last couple of weeks. So just continuously evaluating the conditions and any new guidelines that come out, which things just still change so rapidly. The other thing that we started working on already, since now we're back in the building and we can do this a little bit better, is planning out a reconfiguration of the physical space to enforce distancing if we are to get to the point where we open the doors. So doing things like removing seating, removing computers, spacing, furniture and things like that. We're gonna have some things roped off and kind of funnel people to sanitization stations, and so we need time to do that sort of reconfiguration of our space, which we have started doing now that we're back in the building. The other thing that I've talked to you guys a little bit about before is we also, in order for us to have the public in the building to any degree again, we need to have contracted custodial support beyond what we're getting through our lease at the schools. It's not sufficient. We don't have any cleaning of any tables or surfaces in the library, which is obviously it's already been an issue in the past for us, but it's even more important now. So one of the things that I started talking to both different department heads in the city and the schools on is a renegotiation of our lease to see if we can lower the cost per month so that we can afford, or at least get closer to affording, a contract custodial support. So where I am with that right now is that we're just waiting for feedback from the schools, and I have done we've completed some estimates and walkthroughs with a few different cleaning contractors. And so then once we hear back from the schools, we being myself and our finance department for the city are the departments working on this together right now. Once we hear back from them about what they think is feasible, then we can move forward with negotiations, and obviously will be brought before the library board. But I just need to have some more conversations with the school first, so that I have some more info to actually bring you guys. But that is definitely a step that can't be missed for us to open the doors to the public in any way. We're able to maintain fine we have a pretty low number of staff altogether truly in the building at the same time. We only have 10 full-time staff right now, and we're fairly spread out as we are. So I think that we're in a good place, and I'm hopeful that we can continue the curbside service that we started this week. But I think through all this, we just have to have a flexible mindset. And yeah, I think that myself and staff and city are all on the same page about that things could change. We could go back, we could find ourselves, moving between different phases. It's not necessarily going from 1, 2, 3, 4 necessarily. It's just we're not necessarily in control of what might become with the virus outbreak. So I guess the thing that I'm going to be watching the closest in terms of, and this is again, a step ahead of where we are now, but for us to really return to quote unquote normal as we were operating before, I think the thing to watch is the CDC's and Department of Health's guidelines on limiting number of people occupying a facility and that 6 feet of distance rule. Because until that's lifted, we can't have the library configured, how we normally did before, and doing things like events and scheduling group gatherings and meeting rooms for the public. Those services shouldn't be in place until those guidelines are lifted, which is different than the doors being open and us providing service in the library. But yeah, I just wanted to mention, because that's kind of the guideline or criteria that I think we have to watch the closest when we look at resuming some of those services like programming and meeting rooms and having the space even as we had it previously. Does anybody, I guess I want to stop there and just ask if you had any questions about that or wanted to comment on anything before I move on to a couple other items.
Chris, I'm going to back way up, but I'm going to thank you for taking the initiative on contacting the schools about the custodial agreements. That is incredibly important before COVID-19 and even more so now.
Yep, definitely. If there's nothing else on that note, I did give you a revised version of financials this month, and I wanted to ask if that was sufficient for what you guys were after our discussion last month. So when you're looking at it, we were kind of talking in terms of profit and loss and like seeing balances and that kind of thing, and seeing a higher level. So the report is broken into a few different sections. One is our revenue, so you can see what we've taken in so far in tax money. Then you can see our expenses broken out by the different budget lines, which I think is probably still useful for you guys to see. I mean, it's still a pretty high level, but it's a little more detailed than just like the complete bottom line, if you will. And I think this is also an interesting report and helpful because it shows you where we were last year on some of those lines too. And if you're looking at it, we were talking about seeing like where we are with a balance. That would be the line that's labeled variance. So you can see how much is left in a certain line or how much is left out of the total. So I wanted to just give you guys a chance to give me any feedback on that, or just let me know any changes that you'd like to see, or whether this works or whether it doesn't work. Okay, for now, I will keep getting this in your packet, and if you want to revisit that, that's totally fine with me too.
Chris,
Yeah,
I do have one question.
Yeah.
I have a lot to say tonight, apparently. So I do like the overall report, and I think it's great to have the prior year comparative.
Mhm.
And I don't know that we saw this before, but I thought there was a way that we could still follow the balance. Like before, we could maybe figure out the reserve account.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And is that, I don't see it reflected in here, but is that?
It's a good point. I don't think, no, there is not any representation of the reserve report as there was in the last expenditure report that you guys got, which I think had percentages on it. Let me look into that and see if there's a different report that does include that info, but that would still have at least the bulk of what's on here. And then we can maybe talk about what you'd prefer. Or I will look into it and I will include both.
It might be in addition to,
Yeah,
we
yeah.
still might have more paperwork, but it doesn't have to be drilled down to the fine details.
Totally. Yep. Okay. Sounds good. I will look into that. Alana had reached out to me and asked me a little bit to give an update on strategic planning. So I can talk a little bit about that. I have met with Joe Burgum a couple of times since while the library was closed, just to touch base and kind of keep the ball rolling to a certain extent. And I'm meeting with him again tomorrow to touch base. By and large, since I should back up here. If you remember, I let you know after the commission meeting on March 16th that the contract was approved, and the contribution from the general fund was approved towards the contract. So we're good to go and pull the trigger whenever we're ready. My feeling is that right now, we and so many of our stakeholders and organizations that we want involved in this are really consumed with COVID during and post planning and getting our operations back up and going again, that I don't want to engage people in something like this too early when they're not really ready to be thinking, long term and contributing meaningfully. So my thought is, what I hope we can do is that this summer we can pick the planning back up in terms of planning for the community engagement. If you remember, I had assembled a set of folks who we wanted to be on a strategic planning committee of sorts that would kind of operate on the side and keep the ball rolling with it and do some of the planning for what the community engagement would look like. So my thought is that it'd be great if this summer we could pick that back up and at least get the plan going for what we want to do and how those different, means of engagement will look like. And then also the staff and internal discussions that, are happening side by side, all of that. I think if we can get that going this summer, that would be great. But it's hard to say right now, you know what I mean? Like what's going to happen in the fall if we were going to try to aim to sort of start some of that. I feel like it's a little early to commit to that, but I still think we can keep things going. And I ideally would like to pick up the things that I mentioned this summer. I think we ourselves, the staff, need more time to adjust to all these modified services. It's really affecting every single department, is just, rethinking every service and program in a totally new way. And they're all amazing because they're doing things really fast and being really nimble about it. But it does take a concerted effort to rethink like every way that you do programming and services. So I want to make sure that, we ourselves internally are in a good spot where we feel like we can start picking those conversations back up. So that's a little update on that. I don't know if anybody has any questions or comments.
Is the contract with them, is with Folkways, time determined, or is it open-ended?
It's open. Yep.
Okay, good.
Yep. Couple other quick things. We had a few unfilled positions that we had posted right before we closed down. Things were on hold with those while we were closed, obviously. We've picked some of that back up, so I'm reviewing applications for the office coordinator position that we had open, and then we have a couple of library assistant positions open, so just a heads up on that. We received another arts partnership grant. What the arts partnership did is they took the people that received grants last year, and they, instead of just given everything that's happened, instead of requiring applicants again for the next cycle, they gave the same dollar amounts to the same people that got them the year before, which is awesome because we have more time to do a bigger project and more money to do it. So we're excited about that. Remodeling, I'll give a quick update on that. We had the inspection completed. The schools have approved the carpeting, painting, and wall in those 2 offices that we talked about last month. Schools approved that, so now I'm working with the city facilities manager to coordinate the project with the contractor. So that's where we are with that. Next, we need to have some electrical work done in one of the rooms, and then we need to clear out some items from the rooms before the work can begin, but we're hoping to start by the week of the 25th and get a jump on it during this time before we open to the public. I think that it would take at least a month based on the timeline that I got from the contractor previously. I think some concern they had about delays related to their ability to get materials, but it's been a while since they mentioned that to me, and things have changed a little bit, so it might be quicker. It's hard to say. So that's just a quick update on that. And now I'm going to be done, and I'm going to turn it over to Sarah first to talk about our curbside service and kind of what we've learned so far and how it's gone so far. So, Sarah.
Yay! So I just want to start off with a message that I got from Amy while we started this meeting, and she said one of our patrons yelled through the window saying, "This is great, thank you." And I just wanted to share that because I thought it was hilarious. And that's pretty much a lot of the feedback we've been getting, is that people are excited. They're very thankful we're offering this so they can get their hands on books again. Just some stats. We've had 167 items circulate the past 3 days. We've had 191 requests come through, and that's through the PAC, which is our catalog, and phone calls and our email. And we've had 35 people come and pick up items. We have dropped off a little bit from Monday. We had like 100 some requests Monday, and yesterday we only had 29. We think part of it is weather. Maybe people just didn't want to come out, so it could be that. We don't really know. A lot of the materials that have been going out are adult materials, so like mysteries, adult fiction. And this morning, the adult services manager, Kirsten, she sent me a link to another library that was doing this like picture book kit bundle request. And so we are quickly talking about that, and I'm hoping to get that going by next week to kind of encourage our parents who probably don't want to search our catalog for every title that are picture books, because there's a ton and it's not super easy. So we're going to have kind of different themes that they can pick, kind of like animals, kind of concepts like colors, numbers, shapes, favorite characters, authors. So parents will be able to go into that request, pick one category, and then they'll get 5 picture books. And then they can schedule time to pick those up. So hopefully that'll get some of our kids to have some books again. That's pretty much it. It's going pretty smoothly. Right now we have 2 different times that you can pick up books, 11 to 1 and 5 to 7. And we did it that way to kind of help our staff gather all the requests coming in, so it wouldn't be so hectic. I actually reached out to Fargo, and their first 3 days were very hectic because they were open all from 10 to 6. So I'm very thankful ours is going a little bit smoother. Yeah, I think that's it. If anybody has any questions or comments?
What's the turnaround time for a book? Can you get it the same day?
Yeah, yep. We're doing pretty fast because there's not a whole lot of requests, and we also scheduled that amount of time in between so we can go gather the books. So if somebody called at about 3:30 and they wanted to pick it up by 5, we're pretty fast at getting those all together. So yeah, it's pretty.
And are you only doing requests online, or are you doing phone calls?
Yep, we're taking requests by the phone too. What we do is they tell us some of our older folks are having trouble with the catalog. It can be kind of confusing, and it's so new to us too. We've only had it for 6 months. So they call, we find the book, and then we put it on hold for them through our Polaris Leap. So
Sarah, I smiled because that's me. I tried to go into it and look for a children's book. So I'm very excited about everything you have said tonight.
Yeah, I'm hoping the picture book bundle that we do kind of eases parent searching, because you guys are all still helping with homeschooling, and there's just not enough time to do the searching that is required with our catalog. So that's all I have.
I thought of one other thing that I wanted to mention that Sarah, you're talking about Curbside reminded me of. I'm not going to give too many details because the advisory committee hasn't officially decided that this is what we're going to do, but it's looking like we are going to partner with the Little Red Reading Bus in a much closer way than we ever have before, and sort of build on this experience of building this curbside workflow and apply it to what we could do with our collection and circulating materials on the bus. So I will fill you in as that develops. We are quickly planning for this and are excited about it. So I'll keep you posted on that. So Lauren, I'm going to let you talk about SRP now. I have one other stat that I want to share with the board related to programming. The virtual programming videos that we put out last month were viewed over 80 hours, which is pretty awesome when you consider how short some of the videos are. So I just wanted to point that out, what an awesome job the programming team has done. So now Lauren's going to talk about SRP.
Yeah, so we've really completely pivoted summer reading program this year, obviously with our current situation. So it will be 100% virtual this summer. So we'll still have kind of our two elements of it, where we have like themed activities and events, and we'll also have our reading challenge. Just kind of the access to patrons will be a little different. So this year our theme is Imagine Your Story. So it's all about like fantasy creatures, magic, fairy tales, folk tales, and also telling your story. So we will have like pre-recorded videos, Zoom meetings, sort of different ways you can reach or take part in the activities. And it'll start June 1st. We'll have our kind of, instead of a kickoff party as we've done in the past, we're gonna have like a kickoff week. So every day that week of June 1st, we'll have different ways families and our patrons can kind of engage with the theme. So dress like your favorite character, build a castle, go on a quest, which is like a scavenger hunt. And then the last day of that week, we're doing kind of a big kickoff special. We've gotten some community members to read stories. We're going to have kind of some staff videos, like fun videos, some information about summer reading program. And the kind of highlight of the end of it will be a session where they can ask a princess questions. So we'll get questions from kids and they can kind of listen to a real life princess. So we're working with the FMCT to work with one of their actors and their sets to kind of have a really cool setting for that situation. And then starting the next week, we'll start out with our activities. So we'll continue our virtual story time, so our Wiggle Worm story time and our preschool explorers, but they'll be themed to summer reading topics for the whole summer there. We'll also expand to have craft projects geared more for kids. So some of the things we're doing are fairy wings, wands, we're making gingerbread houses, a movable dragon, some really cool craft projects. And then every week we'll also have at least one kind of more activity-based things for kids. So we're going to do a couple like Harry Potter magical classes. We're going to build castles, do some STEM story times. So we have a lot of fun activities there. For teens and adults, there'll probably be 1 to 2 things every week as well. So we're planning some writing workshops to kind of tell your story. We're planning some author visits. There's some more advanced crafts for the teens and adults. So they're making leather bracelets and faux stained glass. So some of those will be more Zoom live interactions. Some will be kind of pre-recorded just to fit a little better with whatever we're making. With those, we're also planning to do like pre-packaged craft supply kits for a certain amount. So, you know, normally we prep all of those supplies for the kids when they come here. So we're trying to sort of fill that gap a little bit for those who don't have the random supplies we use for some of these. So they'll be able to pick those up either with curbside if we're not open, or we'll have them kind of just right out in the front of the library so they can grab them and go as well while they're available. Then for the reading challenge part of summer reading, we've also flipped that this year. So thankfully, even prior to COVID, we've been looking for a way to do more online or app way to track reading. We've had patrons ask for that, and it's a little easier to keep track of stats and really see kind of current up-to-date numbers on what kids are reading and their prizes. So we had been looking at a online platform, and it also has a mobile app called Beanstack. So we purchased that. So we're really excited for that. We can set up challenges in there. And what's really great is we can use it not just for summer reading program. We're already looking ahead to like winter reading challenges, like community events with it. We're looking even to One Book, One Community this fall, interacting with Beanstack with that. So there's some really cool features with that. And if I'm able to share my screen, I can do a demo too for Beanstack so you can see it a little more in person and not me trying to explain it to you. So. All right, so this is our landing page for Beanstack. So our patrons will come here. This is also how they register for summer reading program. So again, it's a nice way for us to funnel them right to a landing page here. We kind of have a little bit of description about summer reading, and then you can register. An adult has to register, like create an account. They can sign up for programs themselves or for their kids or both, whatever kind of combination you like to do. It has a brief overview of kind of what we do. And then also another nice feature of Beanstack is that it talks about, we can upload our events coming up. So another way for them to kind of interact with other things we have going on during summer reading program. So it's a really quick kind of basic questions. You can just register yourself, add other readers later, or an adult registering a child right away. We do require email as the way to log in. It's just kind of the easiest way. If they don't have an email, we can do offline readers too. So we can upload that information as well. All right. And then right here gives the first child's name. You can add as many children as you have. And then we do ask age, and that's because we did break out the program based by age category. So we have kind of the pre-readers 0 to 5, then we have 6 to 12, 13 to 18, and then 18 plus for our adults. We can ask some basic kind of demographic information too that can be helpful for us to kind of see where our readers are coming from, so we can use that for when we visit schools or different outreach things we do as well. Another great feature of Beamstack is that it will give email book recommendations out every week once you start taking part in the challenge and programs. You're also able to do reviews. So you can write reviews on your books as well. How Beamstack challenges work is you unlock badges. So that's kind of how we're framing our program this year. We want the kids to get excited about unlocking their badges as they go and really completing their collection of badges. So by signing in, we've unlocked a badge. You also get a welcome email right when you register as well. If you want to add more children, you can do that right then and there. So they make it really user-friendly. Again, we do have adult programs, so it's a nice way to try to get the whole family involved in summer reading. All right. So another badge is unlocked there. All right, and then so this is the summer reading challenge for the 6 to 12 year age group. So this is kind of once they sign up, this is how they log their reading. So what we're reaching for again this year, as we have in the past, is the kind of completion of summer reading is reading 30 hours. So that's the ultimate goal. At 30 hours, they get a free book. Along the way, we have other badges they can unlock. When you unlock the badges, they turn bright colors, so you know you've received that badge. We also have badges that have special rewards. So along the way, they can get kind of matching buttons to match the badge, like so they have a physical representation of the badge they won, and we'll also have prizes that go along with those as well. So we're working with some local businesses to try to get different prizes for different levels. So we're kind of finalizing those right now. Another feature we're trying out this year is the activities badges. So just another form of engagement this summer. Some of these have to do with like reading a classic fairy tale. Some are kind of to get them outside, to go on a scavenger quest. And then each age level is kind of tailored to them. So some get more STEM-based for kind of our middle grade and teenagers. And the younger kids are more kind of activity-based. To log reading, it's really simple as well. You click log. And then for a parent with children, you know, it's nice they can choose all readers if you read together, or you can pick the specific account you're logging information on. And then we'll say minutes. So you can pick specific days. It's nice because you can also keep track of like what books you've read. If you forgot in the past what book in the series, you'll have access to that as long as you have your Beamstack account. So we enter the time. And then if you want to keep track of your books, the options there. It's nice because it'll pre-populate with title selections too, so it can go pretty quickly. Another feature, our patrons can write their own reviews of books. So everyone can see that once they log into Beamstack, they can check out what people are reading, see reviews for certain books. So we logged it, and since we read an hour, we've unlocked another badge already. And then if we go down to challenge badges, and you can start to see the badges, we've unlocked the 1 hour badge. So we tried to keep it kind of each level the same this year to really get our patrons comfortable with it and staff. So while the challenges might be a little different, everyone's reaching for 30 hours to unlock their badges. They each have 8 activities we want them to complete. And so they get those kind of physical prizes, but also the excitement of unlocking kind of their badges and seeing what they're accomplishing kind of right there in front of them. Yeah, so we still have kind of the 2 parts this year, but they're definitely going to look a little different with kind of our current situation. So that was a lot about summer reading, but we're really looking forward to this summer. Thanks, Lauren.
Do you have to have a library account to log into the Bean Stack?
Nope. Yeah, so you just have to go to our specific site, but anyone can register.
I think it looks great. It looks really user-friendly.
And it also has a mobile app, which you can't access right now until we publish our site. But once we go live, you'll be able to see that. And that's even more user-friendly. And you can use your phone to scan barcodes too if you're keeping track of your books.
Nice.
Patrons can continue to use this outside of specific challenges. So we do have patrons who like to track what books they've read and try to remember that. And this is a tool for them to do that. So they can keep using this as long as they want and look back at what they've read.
Nice. That's really nice.
Did you say, Lauren, when the site's going to be available?
Oh, yes. So we're making it go live on the 22nd, but our challenge won't go live until June 1st. So you'll be able to register on the 22nd or starting the 22nd, and then you can take part in summer reading starting June 1st. So that's when you can start earning badges.
Carissa, do you have anything else?
Nope, I do not.
Okay. If there isn't any other business, is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Have a good week.
You